Grindhouse, aka Matt. We have an Empire versus Dwarves match, and this should be a very, very, very good match. We're expecting these two players to be somewhat of the favorites of the tournament, and they'll be playing each other for the semifinals. The winner will go to the finals, and the loser will go to the bronze match.
Should be a good game. We got here first pick Empire, counter pick Dwarves, which is a very interesting counter pick to the Empire. I like it a lot. We're definitely going to see some play between artillery, although I was watching the draft a bit, and I think that 530 Phil on the Dwarves drafted excellently in this scenario.
I definitely agree there. Over here for the Empire, we have some Empire Knights. Got some great swords. That's gonna come really in handy against these Dwarven units. We got some mortars. Over here we have Volkmar the Grim. To me, that's an interesting choice against the Dwarves.
Yeah, well, overall, I think Volkmar is a great choice here. I think the most interesting part, though, is that we see him on foot. I might have expected to see him on his Volkswagen against the Dwarves. He's a bit of a nightmare on that thing against Dwarves, just ripping through lines. But him on foot is also fairly good because it makes him a smaller target, and against 3 units of cannons we'll see, definitely might make the difference.
Yeah, and over here for the Dwarven army, we have looks like 3 cannons. 3 cannons. It's definitely artillery fight this game. We got some hammers. We got some giant slayers. We got some dwarf warriors in the front, and the lord is always the rune lord. It's one of the most common, most picked lords for the dwarven armies. We have some thunderers, and we have a grudge thrower in the middle.
Yeah, it definitely looks like an artillery superiority by the Dwarves here, but I feel like 530 Phil, a part of his draft that's very interesting, is I think that he was trying to play a draft game and go super heavy into artillery and play super predictable Dwarves because he might have figured that the Empire player would try to play more aggressively with cavalry, but doesn't really look like that happening. He has a more balanced approach to his army, which is definitely a good thing. You see his front line, great swords, armor piercing. You have the mortars with their splash damage really hitting those tight dwarf formations. Could be some trouble for a very traditional looking dwarf build.
Okay, so how do you think that the mortars are going to handle themselves when they're out of range? And these cannons could very well shoot them down.
I definitely think that the Empire will move up their mortars to start hitting some of the valuable units we have here in the Dwarven line, like hammers, thunderers as well, can be quite good when you get a shot knight in the middle of them. Mostly, though, those hammers I would think would be great trading targets. I don't think the cannons are going to be able to necessarily kill the mortars before they do serious damage and before the rest of the Empire
Okay,
army
so
moves up.
the horns of war have sounded, the trumpets have sounded, and both armies are marching towards each other at full speed. Looks like the artillery is getting into position.
Yeah.
If the Empire can get
Oh,
these
any.
Empire
Yeah.
Knights into great position and maybe do some flanks against these Dwarf warriors, I think they could very well turn the Dwarf army around and rout them.
Yeah, that's true. He could, and we see here the opening volleys coming up from the dwarf artillery. They are focusing down the mortar on the first volley, immediately taking one of these poor mortars to death.
And those cannons are devastating against that mortar.
And we have that mortar has been broken, and it looks like it's down to 1 model, even if they do come back. And I think it's reasonable to think that they might. But even if they do, only the 1 model to go back to. These other 2 mortars, however, are in range, and they start opening up.
Yeah, from what I can tell, these mortars are doing very limited, very minor damage to the dwarves. He's definitely not getting as much value as he wishes he did from those mortars.
Yeah, it does look like Grindhouse has chosen to fight back on his mortars by targeting the cannons for longevity, but those cannons so accurate, even though I think they're overkilling by specifically all targeting the same unit model every time they shoot. I think if he spread around his fire, it might take out more models faster, but in a battle between, dwarf cannons and empire mortars, it's not even going to be close. The mortars, I think, should be trying to maximize their value by hitting infantry, valuable like hammers.
And it looks like the Empire Knights are surrounding the Dwarven army, and the artillery in the middle of the battle looks very vulnerable. And it looks like the Empire Knights are going to charge those positions, not before they take some musket fire from those Thunderers.
Yep, Thunder of Fire will be bad, and Master Rune of Wrath and Ruin even better to lock them down here, but I don't think it'll be enough to stop the Empire's advance with their 3 knights here coming in.
That could be a pretty good bait for those artillery units to go ahead and bait those cavalry into a trap, those Thunderers.
Yeah, we have here the Giant Slayers caught one of the Empire Knights, and it's staying in combat here. And they are routing. Those Giant Slayers getting a hold of those Empire Knights. Bad news, definitely, for the Empire. And we have the Rune Lord here, tanking these Empire Knights as well while the Thunderers shoot in. This is a great strategy coming in here from 530 Phil.
The Dwarven front line looks
but the Empire Knight's getting
against those great swords.
Yep, that is true. That is one inevitability the Dwarf army has to face, is that neither Slayers nor Dwarf Warriors trade into greatswords. So once these hammers are all used up, which if they were the primary target of these cannons, I think might be sooner, then there would be not a lot the Dwarf player would have left in terms of fighting them off.
And those cannons did very good work at making those mortars almost little to nothing value. The cannons have changed targets to the greatswords on the front line. And hopefully the Dwarven army can get some value from those cannons on those greatswords. But it looks like the greatswords are making everything in their path turn and hightail it out of there. What do you think of a Warrior Priest by here?
Warrior Priest, I think, is a great pick. I especially like it with Volkmar, who's already essentially the Super Lord variant of a Warrior Priest Lord. And the two of them together, especially if you were going for like a Death Star sort of strategy, would make pretty powerful buffs and damage against even the Dwarves.
Those great swords are a lot of those Thunderers. Which is to be expected.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I would say here, though, that it looks like the Empire's infantry is starting to run its course in terms of health. We see not many models, or maybe even any models above half health that aren't single entities. And the Dwarf player looking about the same. They do have these Giant Slayers in the back here, though. Pretty full health.
A good
may have been forgotten about.
What can the Dwarves do against Volkmar?
That is a tough one. Bringing him on foot here, I did mention earlier, was a terrific draft choice from Grindhouse. Bringing him on foot makes him a smaller target, and no Dwarf unit left, minus the hammers, which are now pretty well gone. Could have really dealt with Volkmar. Maybe the Rune Lord with some buffs and some friendly help from these hammers coming in. But to be honest, I think this is the Empire's game to lose at this point. Unless we have Volkmar getting picked up by hammer, is potentially what could happen here. I don't see the Dwarf way to get out of Volkmar inside of Volkmar on foot inside of a Death Star with a wizard, and the priest here getting a little bit beat up by the Rune Lord, but he's getting away. You can run from dwarves as much as you want.
Yeah, definitely mobility takes a huge factor here, but the units that could take advantage of those were marched off the field pretty quickly. Those Empire Knights didn't get as much value as he hoped that he would have. And it looks like the Dwarves do have an almost full unit of Giant Slayers in the back, not doing very much.
Yeah, I do see that as well. We have made them maybe getting forgotten about once they chased off the Empire Knights. But Thunder is still on good health. What I mentioned earlier happening to Volkmar maybe came to fruition with him losing a quarter of his health to these very beat up hammers. And perhaps if he was supported by Great Swords and the other lords in a sort of Death Star maneuver, we might see the Dwarves falter
Those
still,
Thunderers
I think.
are definitely putting the hurt on Volkmar. That's pretty
absolutely.
impressive.
That's another.
And the Empire Army
Yeah.
will rout as a result of army losses. And this was a great game by 530 Phil and the Dwarven Army. We should be expecting another great one in Game 2, guys. We'll get back to you shortly.